Good evening and welcome back. If you are just joining us, tonight's hearing on Capitol Hill turned into a sharp and revealing clash over guns, borders, and the limits of federal law.
Senator Reid.
Chairman Moran, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Madam Attorney General, on May 16th, the Department of Justice announced that it dropped litigation to enforce the law against forced reset triggers. These are devices that can be installed in a few minutes on guns like a AR-15 in order to match the rate of fire of a machine gun. In fact, according to demonstrations on YouTube and elsewhere, you can dispose of an entire 30-round magazine in about 4 seconds. So it is a fully automatic weapon. In the press release announcing the settlement, you are quoted as saying the settlement, quote, will enhance public safety. How does putting more automatic weapons, which have been against the law since the 1930s, enhance public safety?
Thank you for that question, Senator Reid. What that will do, it will enhance public safety by settling the litigation, because it is a guarantee that the manufacturer will not put that in handguns. We settled those cases because it was the right decision under the law. Nothing's comical about this. These devices are materially the same as bump stocks. The Supreme Court said last year that they are not machine guns under federal law. We followed the law. We will continue to follow the law. I'm a career prosecutor. I'm going to do everything in my power to keep Americans safe. What we should be concerned about up here are all the illegal guns flowing into our country by illegal aliens who have been free to walk into our country over the past 4 years. And we have taken thousands of those guns off of the street, including drugs, and including violent criminals.
Excuse me. How can you go ahead and say we're more safe today because they will not put these automatic firing devices in pistols, which have magazines of about maybe 20 rounds at most, or maybe 10, and have a range much less than an automatic weapon? Have you ever fired an automatic weapon?
I have.
Well, you understand then that that's a device that was designed to kill people. It's not a hunting rifle. It's not a target rifle. It's mass fire. And you made a compromise saying, well, don't put them in pistols, but you can go ahead and put them out in automatic weapons.
We followed the law. We will continue to follow the law. You and I clearly disagree on the Second Amendment.
Well, I agree that machine guns are not appropriate in the United States, and since 1930 or so, we've outlawed machine guns. And these semi-automatic weapons that are produced in volume are so easily converted to automatic weapons that it's you're ignoring the reality, frankly.
I'm following the law, Senator.
Well, yes, that's right. By the way, how many American weapons are going to Mexico in a year? What are we doing to stop American weapons going to Mexico to arm their gangs?
Well, we need to support that on both sides.
Well,
what are you doing? What
are you doing to support it on our side?
We are arresting people who have illegal firearms in our country. We're not sending people back to Mexico with guns. We're throwing them in our jails and prosecuting them.
You're allowing them to be purchased in the United States and driven across the border. Most of these gangs have completely turned themselves into military organizations because they're using American weapons, American technology, and your argument is that, well, we're not doing anything about them.
No, not my argument. That was the policy of the last 4 years of the Biden administration with open borders. You could come back and forth across our borders. You could buy guns. You could take guns off the street. You could shoot people in our country. You could bring fentanyl into our country. You could bring methamphetamine into our country. You could bring cocaine into our country. That was the previous administration.
No,
not this.
What are you doing to stop the flow of weapons into Mexico?
We are arresting flow of weapons into. Our borders are closed. We are arresting illegal cartels. Sinaloa from Mexico, MS-13 from El Salvador, TDA. We are arresting Venezuela, ATF has seized over 14,600 guns since Donald Trump has been president. That's a 33% increase from the last administration. And think about that. That's with our borders secure.
Were they coming into
so they weren't doing anything.
Were they coming into the United States?
Our borders are closed. They're not coming in or out of the United States now across Mexico. We've done a 33% increase in firearm seizures. Think about that. Think about that, Senator, from the last administration. 33% increase. And our borders are closed. So we're getting all these guns off the streets that came into our country. And I'm so proud of the work of the men and women in law enforcement.
I don't think you've done anything to severely interrupt the arming of Mexican gangs. Because that's really not what your focus, and I think your focus should be on that. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And can I just add one thing? And
no,
because the borders are closed, the borders are closed, we are stopping the guns from going to Mexico.
Well, let me ask you another question. If the borders are closed, why do we have a division headquarters of the United States Army in Fort Huachuca and military elements across the board when the borders close and Border Patrol can handle it?
As former military, I would think you would know the answer to that, to keep Americans safe.
No, I think it's to promote the president's policies on the border, and the readiness of our forces is suffering as a result. Thank you.
Senator Britt.
What began as a technical question about firearm regulations quickly exposed a much deeper divide over public safety, constitutional interpretation, and accountability. Before we get into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our full coverage and breakdowns like this one. At the center of this exchange was a device most Americans had never heard of until recently: forced reset triggers. These are small mechanical parts that can be installed on rifles like the AR-15 in minutes. Their function is simple but controversial. They allow a semi-automatic weapon to fire at a rate that closely mimics a fully automatic machine gun. Demonstrations online show 30 rounds fired in roughly 4 seconds. That rate of fire is not theoretical, it is real, and it is why lawmakers have been alarmed. Senator Reid pressed Attorney General Pam Bondi on a Justice Department decision made on May 16th, when the DOJ dropped litigation aimed at enforcing restrictions on these devices. In the press release announcing the settlement, Bondi was quoted as saying the decision would enhance public safety. The senator's question was direct and pointed. How does allowing more weapons that function like machine guns make the public safer, especially when machine guns have been restricted under federal law since the 1930s? Bondi's answer reveals how much of this debate now hinges not on policy preference, but on legal interpretation. She argued that the department settled the case because the law, as interpreted by the Supreme Court, left them little choice. Last year, the court ruled that bump stocks, devices with a similar effect on rate of fire, do not qualify as machine guns under federal statute. According to Bondi, forced reset triggers fall into the same legal category. In her words, the DOJ followed the law and will continue to follow the law. This is a critical point for viewers to understand, so subscribe now if you want more explanations like this. The federal definition of a machine gun is not based on how deadly a weapon feels or how fast it fires in practice. It is based on whether one pull of the trigger results in more than one round being fired automatically. Forced reset triggers technically reset the trigger after each shot, even though the shooter does not release pressure in the traditional way. That mechanical distinction is what places these devices outside the current statutory ban, even if the practical outcome looks the same to the human eye. At this point, the hearing shifted from domestic gun policy to an international consequence that rarely gets sustained attention. Senator Reid asked about the flow of American weapons into Mexico, where criminal gangs have increasingly transformed into heavily armed, quasi-military organizations. This is not speculation. Multiple studies and law enforcement reports have shown that a significant percentage of firearms recovered from Mexican crime scenes originate in the United States. Bondi's response reframed the issue around border enforcement. She argued that the previous administration's border policies allowed guns, drugs, and violent actors to move freely. Under the current administration, she said, borders are closed, cartels are being targeted, and firearm seizures have increased by 33%. She cited more than 14,600 guns seized by the ATF since President Trump returned to office. The final moment of the exchange added yet another layer. Reid questioned why, if the borders are truly closed, the U.S. Army still maintains division-level headquarters and military elements supporting border operations. It was a reminder that border security is not a binary condition. It is a complex, resource-intensive mission that blends law enforcement, military support, intelligence, and diplomacy. What viewers should take away from this hearing is not simply who scored points or who spoke more forcefully. The deeper lesson is that America's gun debate is increasingly being decided by narrow legal definitions written decades ago, while technology evolves far faster than legislation. At the same time, the consequences of those legal gaps are not confined within U.S. borders. They ripple outward, shaping violence and instability far beyond American cities. If you want more reporting that breaks down what these hearings actually mean, not just what was said, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We will continue to follow this story closely, explain the legal rulings behind the headlines, and show you how policy decisions in Washington translate into real-world consequences at home and abroad.